Hello friends, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up the CI/CD pipeline in Azure DevOps for your Angular 16 application and deploy that to your Azure Web App. And we'll be using the YAML file for this. So stay tuned. We will deploy this application shortly and I'll show you step by step how to do it. So come, let's get started. So if you have already seen this restaurant table reservation application earlier, you know how this works. This works actually based on the login if you have to be an employee or an admin. So when I log in, I'll be able to check in a user. If I'm not able to log in, that's okay. I can be a user as a public user and I can opt for any table reservation here, and then I can go and do all those things, right? So now the reason why I'm saying this is, in order for us to get this application deployed here, right, we need to do certain settings from our portal Azure AD B2C as well. We need separate configuration for local. We need separate configuration for the environment. When it's environment, it could be a QA, just a quality analysis, staging, production, it could be anything, right? So if you're new to all these things, I'll explain you as we go. So the first thing is, in order for us to get this application deployed, at bare minimum thing, you should have this application already created. This website should be created in Azure portal. We have already seen in the video series how to create this. So I've logged into the portal, and if I go to all resource, I should be able to see the two applications that I've already deployed. So let me search for the table. So you see there's a API that is already deployed, and then a website, the Angular website is already deployed. Now what we are going to do in this video is we're going to do automation on, we're going to do a continuous integration and continuous deployment. That's what CI/CD stands for. We're going to create these two pipelines in DevOps, and then we will see how we can deploy this application automatically the moment we check in the code. Okay, so we assume for this video you have this application already created. This web app already created in Azure portal. Let's assume that. If you have not created, it's okay. You can go back and watch in one of my video series. It will show you. I've already shown how to create this. So let's go with this assumption, right? So for that, what you have to do is, let's go take a look at the Angular application first. So this is the Angular application. So let's go one by one. Very first thing that you have to do is go to package.json. Just follow these steps step by step. You will be able to deploy any application. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is go to this package.json, and we need to have the script defined for different environment. So let's assume this is typically a project in the organization, so which will be many environment. They start from QA, even they have something called dev. Other than what you develop in local, that's called local development, but there's something called dev environment, and then followed by the QA environment. Staging environment is nothing but kind of a pre-production. So before going to production, they will have exactly same environment as production to do a real-time testing in the staging. So production environment. Okay, that's what called staging is. Prod is basically a short form for production environment. Now let's assume what we are going to do is directly a production deployment. Okay, the same steps follow for these different environment. It is just that it will be deployed to different website. What we have defined here is, we are saying ng build -- configuration is equal to prod. We are saying there is a configuration for an environment, and that configuration environment is called prod. From where is this prod is coming? Now let's scroll up a little bit, go to environments folder, and here I have environment files, environment.prod.ts. So this prod is named based on this. If I name environment.production.ts, I should have production here. Don't get confused, it's not short form. What you give here is what you give in the configuration. Now, what do we have it here? Let's go back to first environment and see what we have it here. When you build or when you run the Angular application locally, this is the setting that will pick up. Okay, that's the by default setting that picks up. So here we have some endpoints. So we have like the basic localhost endpoint, so which means my API is running locally and it is connecting to those endpoints here. And in my previous video I showed you how to do ADB2C. If you have not done authentication authorization part, go take a look at that video, it will be very interesting. Now this ADB2C configuration is coming from here. It has its own configuration, it has its endpoint, it has its scope, it has its client ID, all those things, right? So now this setting is now read here. So if you come to auth config for ADB2C interested users, the client ID is now picked up from the environment file. Okay, so when you run, everything is picked up from here. Similarly, if you come here, this data was hard coded, if you remember, that is also now calling from reading it from the configuration, which is the environment configuration. Now the next interesting thing that you should know is you have to come to the angular.json. See, under angular.json, here is the place we define few more things about the configuration. Okay, so the first thing, if you come from top, you scroll slowly and you come to something called architect. Under architect, we have something called configuration. Now before configuration, whatever you see, they're all like by default, like what CSS needs to be bundled up, what assets needs to be deployed, what scripts needs to be bundled up, all those things, right? Now again I will repeat, under architect, I'm not going to go under build. Okay, under architect, under build, let me minimize, there's something called configuration. Now starting from line 36 until here, this is one set of configuration. Now what we are defining is a configuration name called prod. Please be remember, this name is again should match with your configuration production. If you type prod here, you type prod here, and the packages.json also. Now here the interesting part is file replacement. We are saying when someone says build the prod configuration, replace this default environment content by production environment content. So what will happen, these are the configuration which is read in the application. Now all this content will be deleted and all the content of this one will be placed. Now is there any difference? Yes, definitely. Now take a closer look. The client ID is different. I have set up a different client ID, a different app registration, everything for production. For each environment, application registration will be different. Okay. Similarly, you see this read scope is restaurant slash prod slash API. Now let me go to this one. It is not the same, which means the settings for each environment is different. Similarly, see the access endpoint. This is the deployed API version endpoint, whereas this one is running from the local. Okay, so now this is the difference. You see this, the base server URL is here. Now I believe you're following up. Please put a comment right now that if you've followed so far. Great. Now from the Angular perspective, we're done with the changes. So from the Angular perspective, we're done with the changes. I'll summarize this alone. We had changes in the packages.json configuring. We are just defining the build configuration, and then we come all the way through the Angular JSON. We do this one, and then we also have this environment set up properly. And then based on these values, wherever you're using in this application, you will be taking it from that application, like from the environment file. So these are the Angular changes. Let me minimize that. Let's go back to the next one. Now, like I said, the application registration is different for different things, right? Now let me switch to this learnsmartcoding.onmicrosoft.com. Let me go to ADB2C and I'll show you there'll be 4 applications. So let me go to app registration, and if you have already followed my videos, you will know about this. So you see this, alright, you see this table reservation app API for production, table reservation app Angular application, which is SPA, right? Single page application for production. So these 2 app registration has been done separately for deploying this into production. When I say production, for me, The moment I deploy to a publicly accessible website, it is production for me. But from organization standpoint, production means really a production where the customers uses it. So they might have dev, stage, QA and all. They're all for internal testing. Okay. Now let's quickly take a look at this. This is important. Okay. Let me go to this API endpoint. I mean the registration, and if you go to, so let me go to the expose an API. See, this is the one which is defined. So you see this base URL is starting with restaurant/prod/API, but the one that we did for development doesn't have this prod. So basically this endpoint has to be unique. That's why I have to put this as prod. Okay. Now once we have these two exposed, and next important thing that you should do is go to spa, and then let's go to authentication. See, under authentication you see this redirect URL is named. Under the authentication, redirect URL is no more localhost 4200, because the moment someone signs in, right? So let me sign out. The moment someone signs in, after you sign in, actually it should bring back to your website, not the local host. See, sign in was complete, it came to the website. That's the difference it makes here. It has to go back to this URL, not your localhost URL. Okay. Similarly for staging and other environment, it will be different here. Okay. Alright, so this is the difference, and then remaining everything is same when you do setup for the different environment. Like, API permission is, you're going to read the API permission from exactly the one which is pointed for production. Alright, so let's assume ADB2C setup is also done. Okay, so now let's focus on Angular 1. So these two are done. Now is the time for you to create the pipelines. Without these, you do not start with the pipelines. It is not going to be useful, because application might not build, and even if it deploys, it may not work. Alright, so we have done all the settings. Now come to dev.azure.com. Based on your project, like this is the organization, come to this organization. Let's assume your project code is somewhere in this repository. So let me consider my stuff. So let me go to this repository. This is the repository where I maintain my source code. Okay. Now the source code is here. All what you have to do is, under that, click on pipelines. When you click on pipelines, and click on new pipeline, this will be your new build pipeline. This is not release pipeline. So what is build pipeline? In order for you to deploy the code to production, what you do in generally you will first build your application, right? Once you build the application, your artifact is what? The application, after it builds, it has some output content, right? So that's called artifacts. So that artifacts needs to be first kept ready. Then release pipeline will come into picture. It picks up those artifacts and it knows where to go and place those files and start the application. That's the release application. I mean the release pipeline. So if you got what I said, do comment in the comment section about what you understood in short. If not, give me a thumbs up. And then what you have to do is, you clicked on new pipeline, and then this is the place you have to choose. Now in my one of the previous CI/CD pipeline video, I've showed you how to use the classic one, right? The classic editor. Now let's get rid of classic editors, because YAML file is the beautiful definition file which is pretty easy and been widely used, and I would suggest that's the preferred one going forward. So you use a YAML file for this. In our case, our repository is in Azure DevOps. So I will choose this, but there are other providers also, but we will choose the YAML file of Azure repository. Once you choose that, it will ask you which project is that. I know my project is here, which is Angular application. Now this is the clever thing, right? It is trying to read the project and figuring out what we are doing. So based on what it read, it already suggesting me what do you want to do. It didn't suggest me anything about the .NET or anything, because it already knows this project is something to deal with the .NET, not the .NET. So it already knows it is something to deal with the Node.js project, which is Angular, not the .NET project. Now I will say I need the build a general Node.js project with npm. There's something called Node.js with Angular. You see this, build a Node.js project that uses Angular. Great. We are using Angular with Node.js, right? I hope you understand. and then you click on that. Now it already read and it gave me some default YAML file. Now let's first explore what it is, then I'll tell you what we need to change. It is telling it has to be triggered based on the main branch. If some code checks into main branch, it gets triggered. Okay, so in organization, depending on each environment, this build pipeline will be different. For example, development it will be different, QA, staging, production, for every single environment, this build pipeline will be different. Based on that, they will choose which main project it is. Like they will choose which branch. So based on that, they'll choose which branch. Generally, for production, it will be release branch. For the lower environment, it will be develop branch and all those things, right? Main is equivalent of master. They removed a word called master because it looks like a slavery thing. So they decided to remove a name called master itself. That's why you don't see master anymore. Alright, now it shows VM image. It is telling this is because the the Angular project, it is going to use Ubuntu latest Linux server to build the application. And then it shows what version of Node.js and what script needs to be installed. So basically, in order for it to build under an image like a virtual machine, it needs to first install the Angular CLI and then npm install for the project. Then it is going to trigger ng build -- prod. Now, if you run this, definitely it is not going to build the way which we want it to be built. Now, what we wanted to build is this one. I'm gonna replace this. The only difference here, right? The trigger is same, pool is same. The build server is same. Here we are saying, please do a run of npm run build prod. So let me go here. The moment you say npm run build prod, what will happen is it will go and build this. It will go and pick up the script which is here. So basically it will run like this. I'll show you if you don't know, right? So for example, let me stop this. Let's type exactly same thing, npm run build prod. So what will happen is it will pick up this configuration and it will put here. You see this? This configuration is now going to be built. When this configuration is going to be used and built, it will literally replace all the content of this file into this file, because that is what we want. So it is going to build that way, and then it is going to name, it is going to put that into this disk folder and name that artifact as angular-app. This one you can name it the way you want it. Like you can put your project name, you can put some meaningful name, whatever it is. So this is the pipeline that we need to do. Very simple. That's it. Save and run. Click on it. I'm going to run this. Save and run. It is creating the pipeline. It is already triggered. Now this is going to be successful and this artifact will be ready. So we'll wait for a few seconds till the artifact is ready. So you can actually see in the log what it is doing. It is taking the branch code. It is actually pulling up all the code to the virtual machine that it is trying to build. It will do all those things. It will do a CLI installation, and then it will do this. See, installation is done. It is actually building the application. It is generating whatever you see here, right? When we saw, you see this, these files will be created. Exactly, these files will be created. Okay, which we will not see, but it will be there in the artifact, which I'll show you. See, build a success. It is going to pull up all those files and it is creating an artifact. See, artifact will be here. See, artifact is ready. Okay, so now the build is success. So we know the build is success. We can come to this pipeline and see the one that we did. Where is that? It is here. Alright, so the build pipeline is ready. The next thing is the release pipeline. So in order to go to release pipeline, under the pipeline there's something called release. Click on release and then you can create a new release. Click on new here. So once you come to release, click on new here, not here. Okay, because this one is for this one. All these are existing one. So I'll click on new release pipeline and this is really easy. So now before we proceed with any of these settings, all what you do is first come back to the place where you have this website ready. So when you come to this this web app, which is for the Angular deployment, Here there is something called download publish profile. Okay, so when you download the publish profile and open it, you will see FTP locations, you will see FTP details. You see this, I can click on download profile, and if something is compromised you can reset the profile. So but I downloaded it, so now when I open this, and basically you will see these information. I just formatted it. Okay, so you can see this is the website name, this is the username, this is the password, and this is the publish URL. So I would suggest you to take the FTP location. Where is the FTP location? Here is the FTP location. So this is the publish URL. Okay, so you need three things from here: publish URL, username, which is this one, and the password. Okay, so let's assume you have copied all these things. Now let's go back to release pipeline, and here you choose Azure App Service Deployment. Because we are going to deploy this to the Azure App Service, we choose this. There are chances based on like you have to deploy it in the Rackspace servers or something, then this deployment is different. Okay, so let's apply this, and the moment you apply, it will ask you what is this. So it is for protection for me, I named it, and then you come here and click on add an artifact. Now it is asking you from where it should add. Now it is asking you from where it should ask. You choose the project, choose the repository. So based on the repository only you build CI/CD, right? So in our case, this was the CI pipeline. So I chose the CI pipeline. It recognized what it is and it is named here. I add it here, and then you click on this one. This one, if you enable it, it will be a continuous deployment. So the moment the build is ready, a new release will be created only when you check this one. Okay, so now this is also done. Now let's go to task. If you go to task here, you don't need this task, so click on add, and then here you choose FTP upload. Choose FTP upload, and we don't need this one, so we remove this. Let's rename this. And now under this FTP upload, there are different ways you can do. One is FTP connection, the server connection, or you can use the credential. Okay, so when you choose the credential, it will ask you the server URL, password, username, and the root folder. So I have to copy paste quickly. I copy the FTP location. Now here is the thing. So under the root, right, what you do, click on this symbol, and it will choose you which one you should change. So once you click on it, if you expand this, it will tell you the artifacts. Choose this artifact. This is the artifact. Under this folder only we have all these things, right? So it will be zipped. It will unzip and use it to deployment. So I say okay. Now all what you have to do is here, come to this remote directory. This is important. This is important. Choose the remote directory. Say site /www root. So we have to be very careful with this. It has to be /site/www root. Okay, this is the place where we will place all our files. Now, so for good, all we have to do is come here. Task is good, retention is good, so everything is looking good. We will click on save, and we will say it's going to be saved under this folder. Click on OK, and first time create a release, choose the staging, and click on create. Now you can look at this release one, and because this is like manually triggered, you need to deploy this. But when you deploy this, you can go to this log and choose this. So it's going to collect all the data, and it is going to deploy that. See, it is downloading the artifacts, it's downloading all the files that we have it, and it is opening up the FTP location, and it is deploying it here. Okay, so before we see a live auto trigger, which we will do it shortly, but let me show you something else. When it finishes, we will see that. All right, it was successfully deployed. Now I can show all these things, but how do you know it was really deployed, right? If I come here, if I refresh this, if it is properly deployed, this will come here. The latest code will come here. Looks okay, but I have no way to prove you that it is really deployed here. I will prove you shortly, but let's go back. What you can do with this release pipeline is, you see this, I will explain you a little bit more here. This is the artifact which is taken here. here we are saying these are the stages. Stages means one artifact can be deployed to multiple stages. In organization, generally it will be first deployed to dev. They will test it. If it works, then they will deploy the same artifacts to the next environment. So which means I need to edit this pipeline. So I will edit this pipeline and I can add more stages. If I add more stages, you see this, it will also tell you we need to set up the same task and other stuff for this one. So I can set up like this. This can be like, for example, QA, okay, and it will become QA, but basically you need to, all right. So this is parallel deployment, right? See, it's coming from here. It's parallel deployment. Ideally speaking, if this is QA, before we go to production, it will be added like this. It will be chained. So from QA, it will be stage. Okay, let's do this. This is only stage. Okay, let's assume this is stage, and from stage, they will do a production deployment. This is only will be production. Okay, so now this is going to be like kind of a dev. This makes sense, right? So the same artifact will be deployed to dev and QA at the same time. After that, you can set up the approval, like the post deployment, pre-deployment condition. Once somebody approves it, it goes to stage, and somebody approves it, goes to production. That's how the workflow will happen. Okay, and I'm not going to do any of these things. I'm gonna like just leave, gonna not save this. But if you come to this edit one more time, right, you can add this here. If you click here, right, it will ask you what you have to do. For example, if I click here, this is called post deployment. If I click here, it's called pre-deployment, meaning before deployment, what I should do, what action I should do. So I can say deployment approval. If I enable this, it will ask to whom it should be sent, who is the approver. So I can be my own approver. Ideally speaking, in company it will be different approver. So when I do this, I will click on the, it's now set up with the pre-deployment approval. I will click on save. I will not create a list. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to this repository and I'm going to go to this main, right? So let me go to this app homepage. What is this page? Homepage. So let's go to homepage. Let's go to HTML, and here we are going to do some comment directly. Okay, so I will say, just for understanding. So just for understanding, I just put some name here. I'm gonna commit directly to the main branch. Got committed. Now let's go quickly take a look at the pipelines. If I go, okay, so it's committed. Let's create a pull request. We don't need it. We actually committed directly to the main branch. So let's go to pipeline. You see this? A pipeline has been triggered automatically. Pipeline is triggered here and it's waiting in the queue. You know why it is waiting in the queue? There is another pipeline which is set up for the same purpose. So basically it picked up. So let's do this. Let's cancel this actually, so that the one that is required for our demo will kick in. So see, this is the one that is for demo. The moment it is ready, it is picked up. Once it picks up, the artifacts will be ready. So you can see this artifact is getting ready. Once it is ready, we will go to the release pipeline and you will see how the automatic deployment is happening. So this is called continuous integration. Okay, so now publishing is happening. Publish is done. Let's go to release, and you see this, as we speak, release pipelines automatically got created, and now it will be interesting. It is waiting for approval. You see this, pending approval, because we have set up the approval in the middle. So when I say okay and say deploy, I don't need to say okay. Actually, this is for understanding comments. You can say approving it for deployment, whatever it is. Once you're done with that, it is going to be deployed automatically. We did not trigger a deploy by manually. It created, we approved it, and it is automatically going to deploy. But the moment it deploys, because we modified a code, I would refresh this page and see what happens. Did the new code came in or the old code was still there? Like, you will see shortly whatever we were doing is all real. Okay, so deployment is done. Let's refresh this page. Great, you see this deployed by release pipeline. So the code was taken it from our repository, the build was triggered, that artifact was automatically creating a release pipeline, and then release pipeline deployed the latest code to the website. So this is what all about CI/CD of for Angular application. See, we had many configuration like the ADB2C and those things. That's all because it's a one-time thing that you have to set up for each environment. But the moment you're done with all these setups already ready, you just need to modify certain things in the packages.json, angular.json, have the script ready, and then go ahead and create the pipelines for the build and the release, and you should be able to set up and deploy in minutes. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and provide your comments, ask questions. I'll be happy to help you, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more tech tutorials. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified when we post new videos. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Happy coding!